Hey, this is Dan from Bible Prophecy and Truth, and this is part 17 of the series on understanding the book of Revelation and the timeline of events. And we're going to talk about Revelation 17 today, the mystery Babylon that's talked about there, and the what God calls the great whore. And it's appropriate to start in chapter 16, where it's the end of the pouring of the vials, the end of the wrath of God. And in the seventh vial, or the seventh bowl, it talks about the earthquake that happens. And there's this mighty earthquake that has never, it's not like any earthquake that's ever happened on the earth prior to this. And it says that the great city was divided into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon came in remembrance before God, to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. And that's kind of a sequential, it's almost sequential in a way. You know, as we've learned, as we've studied through Revelation, we've learned that there's a lot of things that are not sequential. There's a lot of little visions put in here in different places that are going on at the same time, or end at the same place, or span a long period of time, or some of them even are sequential. And this is sequential in a way because it's due to the timing of her destruction. At the time of this, the sixth seal, seventh trumpet, and seventh vial, is when that great earthquake happens, and that's when Mystery Babylon is going to be destroyed. And it's important to understand that it's not the same Babylon that existed 2,500 years ago at the time of Daniel. A lot of people teach that this Babylon is that same Babylon that Nebuchadnezzar ruled. But that was destroyed. It's never really existed, and it does not exist today. If you study it, there's an area that might be. There's a little city there, but nobody really knows for sure that that's it, and it's really not a place that exists anymore. So it can't be. And when we see here, when it talks about this mystery Babylon the Great, it really isn't the same one. It's a spiritual Babylon. It's a different entity, and we're going to look at what that is today. So in chapter 17, verse 1, there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials. That's the pouring of the wrath of God is done by these angels, but this is a separate vision. This is another vision that John sees, and as we know, this happens in the previous chapter, in chapter 16, when the great earthquake happens. Mystery Babylon is destroyed, and I believe it's Rome, and I'll show you why here in this video. So one of the seven angels came and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now it's important to understand that the 7-headed, 10-horned beast is that same beast of Revelation 13 that we talked about. It's the same 4 beasts of Daniel 7 that come together in this one world government of the Antichrist. And so this woman, this great whore, is sitting on this beast. So she's riding the power of the Antichrist. She's riding on this union. And verse 4, And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. So here's where it gets into this. It gets into another description of the beast itself. This is another place where we kind of get some more hints about who this beast is. And verse 8 says, "The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit." Remember, that was opened in the fifth trumpet in chapter 9 of Revelation. And then we saw it again in Revelation 11, when it's this same beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit that is the one that kills the two witnesses at the end of the final 3.5 years. So it's the same beast that ascends out of the pit and will go into perdition. "And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Here is the mind that hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition." It's like, wow, what does all this mean, right? I'm going to talk about it in a second. "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the Antichrist, or unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome him, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he said unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth." Now, verse 17, Revelation 17:17 here, there's a lot of people that think that God is somehow just sitting and not really doing anything in the world, and he's just kind of watching and waiting. But this is one of the places that proves to us beyond a shadow of a doubt that God is still very much in control, that all of the prophecies that God gave us, they are going to happen exactly as God said they were going to happen, and there's no way that anyone, not Satan, not anyone, can change that. It's going to happen, and it shows us right here that this in the very last days, when the Antichrist is in power, and these 10 kings, these are the 10 horns that we saw in Daniel 7 on that 4th beast. Remember, those 10 horns is a 10-horn nation that then aligns with the other 3 beasts of Daniel 7. They all become one beast in Revelation 13. And then we see it here again. And we see that these 10 horns, it's actually God that puts it in their hearts to fulfill his will. It's God that's causing them to do this. And remember, they hate the whore. They hate this woman that's riding on the beast. And we'll talk about that in a sec. Why do they hate the whore? And that's it's very important to understand that. So before we go and look at who this woman is, I want to look at this description that we give of this beast, right? This whatever this 8th thing is, right? The thing that ascends out of the bottomless pit. Why do you marvel? I'll tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her. And it's this same 7-headed 10-horned beast. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. So, and we know really that this is Satan. That this is referring to the dragon. This is referring to the dragon / Antichrist, because this is another one of those places where I believe that this shows us that the Antichrist is going to be possessed by Satan. Remember in the 7th vial, or in the 7 vials, at the end of the pouring of the wrath of God, we see the 3 spirits that come out of the Antichrist and the false prophet. Those 2 men actually have 3 spirits, and one's the spirit of the dragon. It's the devil himself. And this beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit, this is almost assuredly Satan himself. And so this kind of gives us another clue about how this all happens. And then when we look at this, the angel said, "Why do you marvel? The beast thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit." And Satan is going to appear on the scene when there's that war in heaven that we saw in Revelation 12, and he's cast to the earth having great wrath. He's going to appear on the scene, and he's almost certainly going to possess this man who sells his soul to the devil, as they say, to be the ruler of the world. And he's going to be the ruler of the world but it's going to be for a short time. It's only going to be for 3.5 years. But I hope he enjoys it while it lasts, because then he's going to be cast into the lake of fire forever and ever, and suffer. And it's because he doesn't believe in God, obviously. He's going to come and say that he's God, and he's going to take over the world, and he's going to align himself with the false prophet and the dragon, which is Satan. And so this man is just going to do this just out of pure selfish lust for power. Apparently he wants to be the ruler of the world. And there's some things that we don't, that are kind of intermixed in here. It talks about the 10 horns, and it talks about the 10 horns which I saw are 10 kings, right? We know that. It told us that in Daniel 7, that those 10 horns are 10 kings. It's the same thing here. The beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. In verse 10 it talks about there are 7 kings. And 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Now in Daniel 7, we see that there's 10 kings, and that 3 are uprooted. So there's 7 that remain as they were, but there's still a total of 10 kings. The 10 horns of Daniel 7, the 10 toes of Daniel 2, the 10 kings we see here in Revelation 13 and 17. And so this beast, and what I'm saying here is I'm not absolutely certain of this, but it sure looks like, if we tie these all together, that this 8th is of the 7, but he is and is not. Is this showing us how Satan is actually going to possess the Antichrist? It could be. That's what the beast is not yet is. He is the 8th and is of the 7, but it's just kind of very strange verbiage, right? And there's a lot of theories out there of what this might be, and I'm still kind of up in the air on that, on whether or not this actually ties in to the 7 in some other way. And maybe there's 7 kings. Maybe there's because it says that there are 7 kings, and 5 are fallen, verse 10, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. There's maybe something else that we don't know yet, that hasn't happened yet. But from everything that I can tell, everything that, when you put all of these scriptures together and look at the 10 kings of Daniel 7 and how 3 are uprooted, that leaves 7. So there's the 7 kings, and then there's the 8th, which is Satan himself. And so he's of the 8th. He's the 8th, but he is of the 7, and he's part of this group of 10 kings that the Antichrist uses to rule the world. So it's kind of really weird verbiage. And we know that this 8th king ascends out of the bottomless pit. That this is, and it's almost a certainty that is Satan himself. So we know that the 8th king is not really a man. It's not the Antichrist himself. And there's this, verse 7 shows the mystery of the beast that carries her. The 8th king ascends out of the pit. And we know that Satan is the one that gives his power to the Antichrist and to the false prophet. We saw that in Revelation 13. So I throw all this out there because this is one of those places where I'm just still kind of mystified, and there's a lot of theories about it. Some make sense, some don't really. But the thing is, we have to put all of prophecy together. It all fits like a hand in a glove, and maybe this is just something we don't know yet, or maybe it is, that it's part of those 7 kings of Daniel 7, and that's what it's referring to. And it's referring to how the Antichrist is really possessed by Satan. And that's why this beast is not and yet is, and this weird verbiage there. So the seven mountains that we see here don't necessarily have to be associated with the 10 kings or the seventh and eighth king, where it talks about there's seven mountains, and that's in verse 9, where it talks about this. Here is the mind which hath wisdom. The seven heads are seven mountains on which the woman sitteth. Now that doesn't mean that the seven mountains are associated with the seven kings. It's just the woman that sits on the seven mountains. And we don't know, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're associated with the 10 kings either, the seven mountains. It's one of those things that's kind of put in there, and there's several places where it talks about this whore and how to identify her. And then these other descriptions of the beast and the beast that she's riding on. So the seven heads are seven mountains on which the woman sitteth, and there are 7 kings. It doesn't mean that it's referring to the 7 mountains that are 7 kings, right? It doesn't have to mean that, and I don't think it does. The 7 mountains are the woman sitting on is actually something that we can see today. That's pretty obvious to me, and I'll show you right now, because I wanted to bring that up about the beast, because there's kind of that weird verbiage there, and whatever he's talking about, and whatever it was shown to him in that vision, we will definitely know in the last day. But I can't say for sure right now what that actually means. I just think that it probably is referring to Satan himself possessing the Antichrist, because like I've said in the other places that we've looked at this, that it really looks like Satan is going to possess this man. So then let's look at who the woman is herself. Let's see who this woman appears to be. So the great whore, when God uses this word in reference, it's almost always referring to people that turn away from him. And only rarely does it include a religion that didn't start with true worship of God. But it's almost always referring to people who went a-whoring after other gods, as it talks about several times in the Old Testament. So she's someone who it's an organization, it's a woman, and God refers to a woman as the church. In almost every case in the Bible, it talks about a woman when it refers to the church and the people of God. And like I said, when they go a whoring after other gods, that's when God uses this verbiage, right? And then, like it says in 2 Corinthians 11:2, God's true church is symbolized as a woman who is a virgin, and false churches are symbolized as harlots. And we see that this great whore, in verse 1, she's the mother of harlots. Right? Come hither, and I will show you unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. I'm sorry. It's verse 5, not verse 1. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. So she has daughters. And so this church calls herself the mother, and here in the Bible it talks about her having daughters. So she's some church that has daughters, has other churches under her in some fashion. And she's going to come in the name of Jesus. She's going to look like a lamb. The false prophet in Revelation 13 looks like a lamb but speaks as Satan. And she's going to come in the name of Jesus and imitate the true religion and worship of Jesus Christ as God, but she's going to be this great whore. So she's a woman. It tells us explicitly she's a woman, and we know that God uses a woman to identify a church, and specifically a virgin as the true church, and harlots as the false church. So we can see that pretty clearly. So then, there's several things that it talks about here. She's a church that sits on many waters, peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And she sits on a 7-headed, 10-horned beast. She's arrayed in purple and scarlet color. She's the mother of harlots. She sits on 7 mountains. She's a city that reigns over the kings of the earth, and she's drunk with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Now, there's a lot of theories about this, and some of the common ones are that it's New York City, or that it's the United States, or that it's Islam, or that it's the Vatican. So let's look at this. And the thing about prophecies, remember, is that every single thing has to fit, or that's not it. So New York doesn't really fit all of these things. Nothing really fits except that New York's a city and full of sin. But none of these other things fit. She's not a church. She doesn't sit on seven mountains. She doesn't wear purple and scarlet. Doesn't rule over the kings of the earth. Is not drunk with the blood of the martyrs. Same thing with the United States. I mean, none of these things fit. The United States is not even a city. So it can't be this entity because it says that she's a city. It says it explicitly. So it can't be New York. It can't be the United States because there's too many things that don't fit. And then a lot of people say, well, this is Islam. Well, Islam never worshipped the true God. Islam is not a city either. Islam is a religion that's spread over many places. And while they have the city Mecca, which is their home base, basically, it's not really, the organization itself is not a city. It's a religion. And they don't have a city that's basically the home of that religion, right? It's not the same thing as having a city that is called this thing, right? And I'm going to talk about that in a second, why that's important to distinguish that difference. And then Islam doesn't sit on seven mountains. She doesn't wear purple or scarlet. The color of Islam is green. I've got quite a few studies on Islam on my website at BibleProphecyAndTruth.com that talk about Islam. And Muhammad's favorite color was green. And so Islam tends to emulate Muhammad, just like Christians try to emulate Jesus Christ. And so their favorite color is green. And they have green in a lot of things. And they don't have purple and scarlet as their colors. It does not rule over the kings of the earth. And Islam has no daughter churches. She's not really even a church. She's a religion, but never really worshiped the true God. And the 10 kings that we know of, remember, it says that the 10 kings will hate the whore in Revelation 17. So if the 10 kings are Islamic, then why would they hate themselves? That doesn't even make sense. The 10 kings, if they're Islamic, this great whore is Islamic, then why would they hate the great whore? It doesn't even fit. So let's look at what does fit. The Vatican is a church. The Vatican is a city, right? And it's definitely a church. It's the Roman Catholic Church. She wears purple and scarlet. The Catholic leadership, cardinals, archbishops, and bishops wear purple and scarlet. You can see these pictures here. That's the colors of the church. She sits on many waters, many multitudes of nations, peoples, and tongues. Right? She's all over the world. This is a chart showing the population of Catholicism in different countries, and she's all over the world. She sits on many waters. She's the mother of harlots. The Roman Catholic Church is the self-proclaimed mother of all churches. And it's actually true for most Western faith. I mean, if you look at Episcopalian, Anglican, Lutheran, even the Reformation, when they broke away from the Catholic Church at the Reformation, they never really left everything behind. And there's a lot of churches today, these mega churches all over the United States, that are actually turning back to Catholicism and saying that, yes, she is our mother. If you haven't read that in the news, I encourage you to go and research that because it's happening all over the place. And there's an article here from September 3rd of 2000. Joseph Ratzinger, he was one of John Paul II's closest aides. He wrote that the Catholic Church is the mother of other Christian churches, and that in the document he said that it was incorrect to refer to Christian churches ranging from Orthodox to Protestant as sister churches of the Catholic Church, stating that the term sister puts them on equal footing, and they're not sisters, but the Church, the Catholic Church, is the mother. And so this is not only proclaimed by the Catholic Church, but it's also believed by many, I quote, Christian churches in the world, not just the United States. And so this is a very clear sign right here. And then she also sits on 7 mountains. There's a book here that I've got the cover quoted, the 7 Hills of Rome. In the Vatican Catholic, in the Catholic Encyclopedia, it says that it is within the city of Rome, called the City of 7 Hills, that the entire area of the Vatican State proper is now confined. The Vatican is virtually sitting on 7 mountains, which is what this passage tells us. She also reigns over the kings of the earth. And you say, well, the Catholic Church doesn't have an army. But if you think about it, what does the Catholic Church do? Whenever Western civilization goes in anywhere, the black horse, remember, if you studied that page or watched those videos about the seals and looked at what the black horse, wherever the black horse goes, the white horse follows. And wherever capitalism goes, the Catholic Church follows right behind. And it goes into all the nations that turn capitalists, and then once the Catholic Church is a majority in the country, they believe that they have the right to guide the political thinking of any and all her members, and they even dictate to the king what he should do, the ruler of those nations. So even though the Catholic Church doesn't have a standing army, she definitely conquers nations by turning them Catholic, and basically becomes the surrogate ruler of those countries based on that. So she reigns over the kings of the earth. And this passage doesn't tell us that this great whore is the king herself, or a queen even. It just says that she reigns over the kings of the earth. So this fits really, really well. And then she's drunk with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. An estimated 68 million Christians have been put to death over the years for refusing to bow to the false doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church. And that's just a fact. You can go look that up. It's the Catholic Church has killed millions and millions of people over the years. She's definitely drunk with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And then all nations have drunk the wine of her fornication. All the kings of the earth have committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries. And this is from chapter 18. We're going to look at that in the next video, but this is just, it's so clear when you look at everything about the Catholic Church, and you look at everything about the prophecy of this great whore. In my mind, it's a surety that this entity, the Vatican, is going to be this great whore, and the leader of that church, the Pope, is going to be the false prophet. And if you haven't watched my videos or studied my article on that, prophecy in the present times, I highly encourage you to do that, or go look at the video on the great whore, who is the great whore, and the Antichrist and the false prophet, and that will give you this information and a whole lot more about those entities and those people and who they are. And then the Vatican will sit on a 7-headed, 10-horned beast when the Antichrist, when the Pope is going to team up with the Antichrist, and he's going to create this. If you haven't looked at my article, Prophecy in the Present Time, I list a bunch of things that the Catholic Church has prophecies, much like Islam, where it matches the Bible perfectly, just like Islam does, except it's an exactly opposite mirror. And some of those prophecies about the Catholic Church is that there's going to be a final Pope, and that he's going to be this glorious Pope who turns the world into a one world global religion and unites all religions together. And if you know anything about Pope Francis, everything he's doing right now is geared towards interfaithism and getting the world to turn into this one world religion that he's trying to create. So who is the great whore? This is the combined one world government beast, that beast that she sits on. It's shown in Daniel 2, 7 and 11, 7 through 11, Revelation 13 and 17. All of these prophecies all fit together perfectly with this end time one world government beast, the seven-headed, ten-horned beast. And the false prophet is going to ride on the power wielded by the Antichrist and will rule with him. We saw that in chapter 13, where the false prophet is going to team up with the Antichrist. There's going to be two men that are involved in that. And then this beast is also presented in scarlet color here in Revelation 17, because it will be a socialist government that rules the world. There's going to be a dictator, and it'll be a socialist government that rules the world. In Revelation 13, we can see how that is going to take place. And that's so this shows us explicitly who this entity is. The leader of the great whore is going to be the false prophet, and this great whore is going to ride on the power of the Antichrist. And we see this today. We see this happening so clearly when we see prophecy and we know what's going on in the world with Islam today. If you haven't watched any of those videos or looked at any of those articles that I've mentioned in previous videos, please do. Look for the Islam in the Bible video. It's not on YouTube because they banned it, but it's on rumble.com under rumble.com/Bible prophecy. It's also on my website, and it's also linked in several articles on my website. On the Islam article under the notes menu. It's also in a couple other places. If you go to the actual video player and things like that. But the article on prophecy in the present time is also a very good one that shows all of this information that I'm talking about right here, and it links to some of the videos. So definitely look at those other videos and other articles and get some more information, because when you really see how all of this fits together so perfectly with everything else in prophecy, it fits like a hand in a glove, like I said. And so definitely go watch those other videos and get some more information, decide for yourself, and read up on this, because it's absolutely fascinating when we know what's going to happen, what God told us is going to happen, and then we see we're living in a time right now where the words were closed up and sealed until the time of the end from Daniel 12. Well, we're living in a time that it's the time of the end, and the words are no longer closed up and sealed. We can tell what they are. It's absolutely amazing. So definitely go and watch those other videos, and then in the next video we'll look at chapter 18. God bless you.